Welcome to the Windy Valley Digest. The following is an overview of the Halloween-themed selections you'll find among our pages and recordings. Within are voices from across the centuries. Pliny the Younger questioning the nature of phantoms. A Victorian doctor summoned to witness a death foretold. And Mark Twain's sharp, humorous twist on a ghost story, interwoven with poetry that reflects on mortality. It's a window into the kinds of lost stories and forgotten poems we bring back to light. The full texts await you at the Windy Valley Digest.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. For this deep dive, we're doing something a little different. We're stepping into, well, let's say the shadows. We're looking at a collection of pieces around a theme that touches on some really old fears, some deep human curiosities.
And it's a really interesting mix, isn't it? We're not just looking at one type of document. We've got a letter, a couple of short stories, even some poems.
Right, spanning different eras, different styles.
Each piece gives you a slightly different angle on the unexplained, the things that flicker at the edge of our vision.
That's a great way to put it. It really shows how different kinds of writing from different times can speak to the same anxieties, the same big questions.
Absolutely. And the origin of this collection is pretty interesting, too.
Yeah, we tracked it down. It seems to come from the third episode of this other podcast, the Windy Valley Digest podcast.
Right. And their whole mission, as they state it, is finding these lost stories, these forgotten bits of writing.
They mentioned digging through archives, bookshops, flea markets, libraries, even just the corners of the web, like literary archaeologists, he said.
Something like that. They're trying to bring forgotten things back to light. And this particular collection, this episode of theirs, was presented as a kind of special feature.
Yeah, they mentioned it was a break from a series they were doing about someone called Bernard Treves.
And they explicitly called this one their special Halloween episode.
Which, immediately sets the mood, doesn't it? Tells you exactly what kind of territory we're heading into.
Definitely. Spooky season vibes. The theme is unmistakably the shadowy, the supernatural.
And the collection itself promises a real mix. You've got these ancient Roman anxieties about ghosts, some classic Victorian chills.
But then also, surprisingly, a bit of humor mixed in there towards the end.
Which is an unusual combination to find curated like this. Ancient fears, Victorian gloom, and laughs.
So maybe before we dive into the pieces themselves, it's worth talking a bit about how the original podcast, the Windy Valley Digest, actually put this together and presented it. Their structure seems quite deliberate.
Yeah, looking at the material, their core method seems to be curation. Just like they say, finding these diverse texts, the letter, the stories, the poems, and grouping them thematically.
They're not just sticking to one genre or time period. They let the theme, in this case the supernatural, guide the selection.
And the way they present it is interesting, too. They don't just have one person read everything straight through.
No, they use different readers for the different pieces. Clerica for the letter, someone called Newgate Novelist for one story, Esther for another.
It's a simple thing, but it makes a difference, right? Gives each piece its own voice, its own feel, stops it all blurring together.
Exactly. It adds a layer of performance, makes the words feel a bit more alive, maybe closer to how they might have been experienced originally. Less like reading a historical document and more like hearing a story told.
And they're not just sticking to audio either. They seem keen on connecting with listeners online.
Right. They mentioned a Facebook page for updates, pretty standard stuff, but also this YouTube presence.
Windy Valley Bookshelf, they call it. And plans for a similar channel on Rumble.
And that YouTube channel sounds particularly interesting. They describe it as illustrated audiobooks.
Which means what exactly? Dramatic readings paired with visuals.
Yeah, they mentioned using dramatic readings, sometimes even multiple voices for different characters, and setting that against classical artwork, illustrations that might have originally accompanied the stories, or art from the period that fits the mood.
Oh, that's quite involved.
Yeah.
So you're not just hearing the story, you're getting a visual sense of the world, the atmosphere, maybe even the characters as artists back then imagined them.
Precisely. It's trying to make these old narratives more immediate, more tangible for a modern audience, bridging that gap between the archive and, well, us.
Making history feel a bit less dusty. It shows a real dedication to not just finding the texts, but presenting them thoughtfully.
So that's the framework. Curated old texts, multiple readers, illustrated online versions, a pretty neat approach.
Okay, so let's follow their lead and dive into the first piece in this shadowy collection. And this one takes us way back.
All the way back to ancient Rome, we start with a letter from Pliny the Younger.
Pliny the Younger. You usually think Roman administration, politics, maybe that famous Vesuvius eruption letter, not necessarily ghost stories.
Well, he was certainly a major figure, lived 62 to 113 AD, and yes, his letters are incredibly important. He wrote, or rather polished and collected, 247 of them that survived.
And they're not just personal notes, are they? More like public-facing documents in a way.
Many were, yes. Written with an awareness they might be read more widely. And that's why they're such a goldmine for historians. They give us this amazing window into Roman life in the first century. Daily routines, social events, political concerns, his own thoughts.
And the material we looked at mentioned a couple of his other famous letters just to give us a sense of his scope.
Right. The Vesuvius letter is probably the most famous. A detailed eyewitness account, well, from a distance of the eruption that buried Pompeii and Herculaneum. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, actually died during it, trying to rescue people.
And his description was so accurate, wasn't it? About the eruption column and stuff.
Incredibly so. He described the huge ash cloud, the pyroclastic flows. It was so precise that volcanologists today call that specific type of powerful, explosive eruption a Plinian eruption, named right after him.
Wow. From ancient Rome to modern geology, that's quite a legacy. But the material also mentioned another letter, one that's maybe a bit darker, about how he handled early Christians.
Yes, that's a letter to the Emperor Trajan. Pliny was governor of a province, Bithynia and Pontus, and he basically wrote to the emperor asking for advice on how to deal with Christians being brought before him. He wasn't sure about the legal protocol.
What was the core question they had?
He wanted to know if just being a Christian, just claiming the name, was enough to warrant punishment, even if they hadn't committed any specific crimes associated with the group, or should he only prosecute if actual crimes are proven?
And the material included that detail about his own practice, which sounds pretty harsh to modern ears.
It does. He told Trajan his method was to ask them 3 times if they were Christian. If they admitted it all 3 times, he ordered their execution.
Just like that, for admitting it.
He saw it as obstinacy and inflexible perverseness, stubbornness that defied Roman authority. So yeah, regardless of other crimes, persistent admission was enough for execution under his orders. It's a stark reminder of the realities of Roman rule sometimes.
So you have this guy, this Pliny. He's observing volcanoes with scientific precision. He's administering Roman law, sometimes brutally, and he's also writing letters about ghosts.
Exactly. It shows the complexity of the person. And this letter we're focusing on, addressed to his friend Sura, shows that same inquisitive mind tackling the supernatural.
Okay, let's really get into this letter then. How does he start it off?
He frames it politely, saying he wants to use their leisure time to benefit from Sura's great learning. Then he gets right to the point, the question that's clearly been on his mind.
Which is?
Do phantoms, specters, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, actually exist? Do they have their own form, their own supernatural power? Or, he asks, are they just mere empty delusions created by our own fear, by a mind that's disordered?
So real supernatural phenomena versus psychological explanation. The age-old question.
Pretty much. And interestingly, Pliny doesn't just dismiss the ghost possibility. He actually says where he stands.
What's his leaning?
He says, I am led to believe in their existence. Not because he's seen one himself necessarily, but based on stories he's heard. And he shares a couple of these accounts with Sura as evidence.
Okay, account number 1. What's the story?
It's about a man named Curtius Rufus. At the time, Rufus was relatively unknown, just a hanger-on with the governor of Africa, still in humble circumstances.
So not a big shot yet. What happened to him?
One afternoon, Pliny says, Rufus was pacing in a colonnade, one of those covered walkways, and this figure appeared to him.
Described as?
A female form of superhuman size and beauty. So, quite striking. Not just a vague shape.
And did it speak?
It did. It identified itself as Africa, the personification of the continent or the province, a really powerful image for a Roman there. And then she gave him a prophecy.
About his future.
Exactly. She told him he'd go to Rome, hold high offices, eventually return to Africa as governor, the top job there, and that he would die in that province.
And Pliny's punchline is?
All which things were fulfilled. He presents it as fact. Rufus did rise through the ranks, became governor of Africa, just as predicted. Pliny uses this as proof that these apparitions can have real predictive power.
That's compelling, if true. But there was more to Rufus's story, wasn't there? A second encounter?
Yes, even more ominous. Pliny says when Rufus eventually returned to Africa as governor, as he was disembarking at Carthage, the same figure appeared to him again right there on the shore.
And the timing was significant.
Critically so. Pliny says the second sighting coincided exactly with Rufus being seized with illness, and upon seeing the figure again, Rufus immediately abandoned all hope of life.
Even though others didn't think he was dying.
Right. Pliny notes that those around Rufus didn't despair, they tried to encourage him, but Rufus knew. It was like the apparition wasn't just predicting death this time, it was delivering the summons. He recognized his fate was sealed.
So for Pliny, that story shows phantoms can be prophetic and maybe even fatal. What's the second big account he shares? This one sounds more like a traditional ghost story.
It really does. It's the story of Athenodorus, a philosopher, and a haunted mansion in Athens.
Okay, set the scene. Haunted mansion in Athens.
Pliny describes it as, on the surface, very appealing, spacious, and commodious. Big, nice house. But it had this terrible reputation, known to be of evil repute and dangerous to health. Just living there could apparently make you sick, or worse.
Because of the haunting, what kind of disturbances?
The main thing was noise at night. A sound as of iron, specifically a clanking of chains. It would start far off in the house and then get closer, louder.
And then you'd see something.
Eventually, yes, the source of the sound would appear. An ancient man, sinking with emaciation and squalor, with a long beard and bristly hair. And the key detail, he wore shackles on his legs and fetters on his hands, and he'd shake them. A really grim image.
Yikes. And what happened to people who lived there before?
Pliny says they endured miserable and horrible nights, couldn't sleep. This led to sickness, the terrors increased, and eventually death.
Understandable why it was deserted then.
Completely. Abandoned to the ghost. And because nobody wanted it, it was up for sale or rent really cheap. Suspiciously cheap.
Enter Athenodorus the philosopher.
Exactly. He comes to Athens, sees the ad, hears the whole spooky story behind the low price, and Pliny says he rented it all the more readily. Maybe philosophical curiosity trumped fear.
Or he thought he could handle it. How did he prepare for the first night?
Very methodically. He didn't just wander in, he set up his workspace, sofa, notebooks, writing tools, a light in the front part of the house, sent his servants away to the inner rooms.
Why the front and why the writing?
His strategy was to keep his mind totally occupied with his work, specifically writing. The idea was to prevent his imagination from running wild, conjuring empty terrors out of fear or boredom, grounding himself in intellectual activity.
A rational approach to an irrational situation. Did it work? Did the haunting start?
Oh, yeah. After some initial quiet, the chain noises began again. Far off, then closer, then right inside the door of his room.
And Athenodorus, did he panic?
Pliny stresses his incredible composure. He apparently never raised his eyes, nor slackened his pen, just kept writing, tried to consciously harden his soul and deaden his ears to the sound. Sheer willpower.
That's amazing self-control. But it couldn't last forever, right? He must have looked eventually.
He did. And there it was, the specter standing there signaling to him with its finger as though inviting him, just like the legend said.
And Athenodorus' reaction then? Surely he jumped up.
Nope. Still remarkably calm. Pliny says he just made a sign with his hand, like, hang on a sec, and went back to his writing.
You're kidding. He told the ghost to wait.
Apparently so. Pliny even adds the detail that the ghost was rattling its chains over his head while he finished up whatever he was writing. It's almost comical, his coolness under pressure.
So he finishes writing. Then what? Did he just ignore it?
No, his purpose wasn't just to ignore it. Once he was done writing, he took his lamp and followed the figure.
Followed the ghost. Where did it lead him?
Pliny says the ghost moved slowly, as though oppressed by its chains. It led him out of the house, into the courtyard, and then vanished suddenly.
Poof. Gone. End of story.
Not for Athenodorus. His practical philosophical mind kicked right back in. He didn't just run away scared.
What did he do?
He marked the exact spot where the ghost disappeared. Just used some grass and leaves. Then, the next day, he went straight to the city magistrates.
Report the ghost?
More than that. He told them the story and urged them to dig up the spot he'd marked. He directed them to a specific location based on the ghost's actions.
And they actually dug there. What did they find?
They did. And digging revealed some bones attached to and intermingled with fetters. The body had mostly decayed, but the skeleton was still there, in chains.
So the ghost was the spirit of someone who'd been chained up, probably murdered, and improperly buried right there in the courtyard.
That's the strong implication. A restless spirit tied to its unburied, mistreated remains.
And the solution?
They gathered the bones and gave them a proper public burial, due sepulture, as Pliny puts it, and the result, the house was ever afterwards free from the spirit. The hauntings stopped once the injustice was rectified.
That's fascinating. It gives the haunting a sort of logic, a cause and effect within that supernatural framework. It's not just random terror. But Pliny didn't only rely on these stories he'd heard, right? He mentioned things happening in his own house.
Yes, he brings it closer to home with these incidents of mysterious haircutting. Less dramatic than a chained ghost, maybe, but still very strange.
Haircutting. Tell me about the first one.
It involved the younger brother of one of his freedmen, an ex-slave who now worked for him. The young man was sleeping and dreamt someone sat on his couch, came over with scissors, and cut the hair off the crown of his head.
Just a dream, then.
Well, that's the thing. The next morning, they found his hair physically cropped around the crown, and the cut locks of hair were scattered around. The physical evidence matched the dream.
Weird. And there was another one.
Shortly after. This time involving one of Pliny's own young servants, a lad sleeping in the pages' quarters with other boys.
What did he report?
He said he saw two figures in white tunics come in through the windows. They cut his hair while he lay there, seemingly unable to move, and then left the way they came.
And, again, physical evidence.
Yes. Found shorn, hair scattered, two separate incidents, same weird phenomenon in his own household.
Okay, that's bizarre. How did Pliny himself interpret this? Did he think it meant anything?
This is where it gets really interesting because he connects it to the political climate, specifically the dangers under the Emperor Domitian, who was known for being paranoid and executing potential rivals.
How does haircutting relate to Roman politics?
Pliny first says nothing major happened after the haircutting, except perhaps this, that I was not brought under accusation. He genuinely believed he would have been accused and likely executed if Domitian had lived longer.
Why? Was he under suspicion?
Apparently so. He mentions that after Domitian died, some paperwork was found in the emperor's desk, information against me. Basically accusations, brought by someone named Carus.
Okay. So where does the haircutting fit in?
Pliny explains there was a Roman custom where people under accusation would let their hair and beard grow long as a sign of mourning or distress while awaiting trial.
I see. So cutting hair would be the opposite of that.
Exactly. Pliny interpreted the cutting of his slave's hair, symbolically representing his household as an omen, a sign of the danger which threatened me being averted. He thought this strange supernatural event was foretelling that the threat against him, the accusation by Carus, would come to nothing, which it did when Domitian died.
Wow. So he's reading supernatural signs through the lens of his own political anxieties and Roman customs. That's a fascinating mental leap.
It really shows how intertwined these beliefs could be with daily life and high-stakes politics. So after laying out these three kinds of evidence, the prophetic ghost, the classic haunted house ghost, and the weird domestic omen ghost, Pliny gets back to why he's writing to Sura.
Right, he circles back to his original question.
He asks Sura again to use his great learning to think deeply about this whole phantom business. He says the topic deserves long and deep consideration. He genuinely respects Sura's intellect.
And he wants Sura's opinion to help him figure it out, right?
Yes, he says he feels deserving of Sura's wisdom on this. He even invites Sura to argue both sides. Maybe ghosts are real, maybe they're delusions. A proper philosophical debate.
But he adds a little plea at the end, doesn't he?
He does. He asks Sura to please, ultimately, argue more forcibly on one side than the other. He doesn't want to be left hanging in suspense and anxiety. He wants resolution. He wants Sura's learning to settle his doubts, not just explore them.
It's such a human touch at the end of all this rational inquiry and spooky storytelling. He just wants an answer. It's easy to see why the Windy Valley Digest included this letter. It's ancient, it's thoughtful, it's got great stories, and it touches on these timeless questions about what's real and what we fear.
Absolutely. It perfectly sets the stage for exploring how these themes evolve. So, moving forward quite dramatically in time.
Many centuries later, where does the collection take us next?
To Victorian England, a period absolutely obsessed with ghosts, spiritualism, seances, the whole bit. The second piece is a short story called Ghost's Summons.
Ghost's Summons, and the author is Ada Wiesen. published in Belgravia magazine in 1868.
That's right. And Ada Wiesen herself is a bit of a mystery. Born 1839 in South London, published one novel, several stories in Belgravia, but she actually died in 1866.
Wait, so this story was published after she died?
2 years after, which adds this extra layer, doesn't it? A story called Ghosts Summons, published posthumously, a little eerie in itself.
Definitely adds to the atmosphere. Who tells the story?
It's narrated by a Dr. Frederick Reed. He's presented as a young doctor, just starting out, struggling a bit financially, not many patients, fees are low, makes him relatable, maybe a bit desperate.
Okay, and the setup for the main event?
Classic Gothic stuff. Cold, icy night near Christmas. The doctor's hoping for a quiet evening in.
And then a knock at the door.
Pretty much. An unexpected and very strange patient arrives. His appearance is immediately shocking. Ghastly, a white horror on his face, agony in his sunken eyes. He looks like death warmed over.
So the doctor assumes he's critically ill.
Naturally, but the man insists he's not ill in any way a doctor can fix. He says he knows with absolute certainty he will be dead before 1:0 a.m.
Why? Because of an illness?
No, because he claims he's received a mysterious summons from the dead, and he tells the doctor flat out, no mortal aid can avail me.
Whoa, so supernatural appointment with death. What does he want the doctor for then, if he can't be helped?
This is the bizarre part. He offers the doctor £1,000, which was a massive amount of money back then, especially for a struggling doctor, not to cure him, but just to stay with him overnight in his room and witness whatever happens.
Just witness. Like be a paid observer to his ghostly demise.
Exactly. And to prove he's serious, he pulls out a legally signed will, already witnessed, naming Dr. Reed as a beneficiary for this certain service rendered. It's all formally arranged.
That's incredibly weird. Did the doctor agree?
After some hesitation, yes. The money was too tempting, and the man seemed so strangely certain. So off they go.
The journey must have been tense.
Oh, yeah. Dark, cold, snowing. The patient is grimly silent, feverish to the touch. They pass a churchyard just to drive the point home. And as the time gets closer to 1 a.m., the patient gets visibly more terrified, muttering, "But 2 hours more."
And the destination. The patient's house.
A large mansion. The room they go to is splendidly furnished, showing the man's wealth. But the whole house has this intense and ghastly silence, very oppressive. The patient is just shuddering with horror as the clock ticks down.
What's the doctor thinking at this point? Still thinking it's medical?
He's trying to rationalize. He suspects the patient is suffering from a fearful hallucination, maybe a breakdown affecting his nervous system. He even tries to slip him a sleeping powder and some wine, hoping to calm him down, maybe interrupt the delusion.
But the story suggests it wasn't just a delusion, right? The doctor experiences something himself.
He does. He nods off, but wakes suddenly just before 1 a.m. with this ghostly thrill of horror. The silence feels intense, charged with something nameless but unutterably awful. He knows something is in the room.
And he sees it.
He sees its reflection in a mirror opposite the door. That awful shape, that ghastly mockery of what had been humanity.
What did it look like?
Terrifying. Described as wearing invisible death clothes, its face ghastly with corruption, eyes like green, glassy portals to hell almost. It sounds very solid, very real, not wispy at all.
And the doctor's reaction?
Frozen, utterly paralyzed by fear, can't move, can't speak. He just watches as this horrifying shape drifts towards the patient's bed.
What happens then?
From his viewpoint, he hears a low, stifled, agonized groan from the bed, the patient presumably. He sees the shadow of that ghastly messenger bending over the bed.
And then there's that specific chilling detail.
Yes, he sees the shadow of a claw-like hand from which the third finger was missing, extended over the bed.
A claw-like hand missing the third finger, just as the clock strikes 1.
Precisely. As the hour hits, that shadowy hand seems to fall, and there's a wild shriek, the patient's death shriek, and then silence.
God, that's creepy. What does the doctor do after that?
He seems to black out or faint for a moment. When he comes to, the presence is gone. Huge relief. He lights a taper, desperately hoping it was all a nightmare, a shared hallucination.
Though it wasn't. He checks the patient.
He goes to the bed. The man is dead. His face is initially described as swollen, convulsed, showing the terror of his death. But then something strange happens as the doctor watches. The distortion fades. The face becomes deathly white. The features relax, and this sad, solemn smile appears. As if peace or maybe some grim resolution has finally come. The doctor, even then, notes this transformation with a kind of detached, professional fascination.
So the doctor witnessed something. He leaves the house. Gets his money.
Yeah, he slips out discreetly the next morning, fees secured. Then the rumors start swirling in town. Big funeral, inconsolable widow whispers about an apparition seen that night, the widow being terrified and leaving the mansion.
Okay, so it could have just ended there as a scary story the doctor experienced. But there's a twist, right? The will gets challenged.
Exactly. The doctor hears the widow, plans to contest the will, arguing her husband must have been insane because of his belief in this mysterious summons. This puts the doctor's inheritance and maybe his reputation at risk.
So he has to get involved again.
Right. He contacts the lawyer and the widow. He claims he can prove the husband wasn't insane, that he has a strange and horrible story to tell his eyewitness account, basically.
He meets the widow at the mansion.
Yes. He describes her as beautiful, poised, controlled, seems like a strong woman, which makes what happens next even more impactful.
What happens? Does he tell her the whole story?
During their conversation, his eyes are drawn to her hands, first her right, then her left hand as she gestures or holds something, and he sees it, the detail that clicks everything into place.
What does he see on her hand?
Her left hand. It was shaped like a claw, and the third finger was missing.
No way. The same deformity as the shadow of the ghost's hand he saw.
The exact same physical deformity. The connection is immediate and horrifying. The living widow shares the exact same mark as the spectral messenger.
So what does the doctor say? Does he accuse her?
He doesn't need to spell it out. He just looks at her hand, looks at her, and says something like, "Madam, all I can tell you is that the ghost who summoned your husband was marked by a singular deformity. The third finger of the left hand was missing."
Boom. Just lays it out there. What's her reaction?
We don't get her direct reaction, but the result speaks volumes. The doctor leaves. The will is never disputed. He gets us the £1,000 check the next day. Case closed.
And the final word on the widow.
The last thing the doctor hears is that she had apparently herself seen that awful apparition after his visit, or perhaps confronted something she already knew, and she fled the mansion immediately, never to return.
Wow, that is a chilling twist. It implies something truly terrible about the widow and her connection to the summons. Ada Wisen packed a real punch into that story. Very Victorian, that mix of ghost story and dark, hidden secrets.
It's incredibly effective. A tight, atmospheric tale with a genuinely shocking reveal. Okay, so from ancient Rome and Victorian London, the collection now jumps across the pond.
To America. And a very famous name this time.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain. Okay, now I'm expecting something different. Humor, right? Satire. Not straightforward horror.
Well, that's the interesting thing. The material notes that the story, titled simply A Ghost Story, actually starts off showcasing Twain's often hidden talent for writing things other than humor. It builds genuine suspense first. But yes, it definitely becomes rife with humor later on. It pulls a switcheroo.
All right, I'm intrigued. How does it start? What's the spooky setup?
It begins very traditionally. The narrator rents a big, isolated room way up high in this huge, old, completely empty building on Broadway in New York. He describes the atmosphere perfectly dusty, silent, solitary, like being in a tomb. Total isolation.
Sets a mood. Does he feel creeped out right away?
Yeah, he mentions feeling a superstitious dread just entering the building for the first time. Startled by little things, like walking into an invisible cobweb. He's primed for scares.
And does he get them? What happens the first night?
Oh, he gets the classic treatment. He settles in, feeling lonely even with fire going, then wakes up suddenly in the middle of the night with that shuddering expectancy, like you just know something's wrong.
And then the classic sign.
The bedclothes start sliding off, pulled slowly, deliberately from the foot of the bed by unseen hands.
Okay, standard ghost move. How does he react?
Frozen with fear at first. Then he tries to fight back, grabs the covers, pulls. There's a tug of war, but the invisible force is stronger and the blankets get yanked off completely.
Did he make any noise?
He lets out a groan of terror. And then, chillingly, he hears an answering groan from the foot of the bed. Definitely not alone. He's terrified, sweating, feels more dead than alive.
So far, so standard haunted house. What happens next?
He hears a footstep, but not just any footstep. It's described as incredibly heavy, like an elephant, and distinctly not like anything human.
An elephant tread. Where is it?
Initially, it moves away from his room, down the corridor, which gives him a tiny scrap of relief.
But it doesn't leave.
No. He hears it moving around the empty building. It comes back towards his door, passes right through it without moving bolt or lock, ghost confirmation there, and then wanders off again down the dismal corridors, making the floors creak under its unnatural weight.
Okay, that's unnerving. How does the narrator cope? Does he try to explain it away?
He tries desperately. He convinces himself it must have been a dream, simply a hideous dream. finds a bit of comfort in that idea.
But the comfort doesn't last.
Not at all. He gets up, summons the courage to light a lamp, checks the door locks, and bolts still secure from the inside. Okay, so far maybe still a dream. But then he looks at the fireplace hearth, and he sees a great footprint in the ashes, right next to his own, and it's huge, so vast that in comparison, mine was but an infant.
The elephant tread. Physical proof.
Exactly. That footprint shatters the dream explanation. Something enormous and non-human was physically in his room. Dream over. Terror back on.
So now he knows it's real. Does the haunting escalate after that?
Big time. He goes back to bed, palsied with fear, and then the sounds really kick off a whole symphony of spookiness.
Like what?
A grating noise overhead, the sound of a heavy body being thrown down hard enough to shake the windows, muffled slamming of doors all over the building, stealthy footsteps creeping everywhere, sometimes coming right up to his door, pausing, then leaving again.
Classic haunted house sounds. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. The clanking of chains, faint at first, then getting closer, rattling on every single step as something ascends the stairs towards him.
Chains, footsteps, slamming doors. What else?
Muttered sentences like indistinct whispering, half-uttered screams that seem smothered violently, the swish of invisible garments moving past, the rush of invisible wings, its auditory overload.
He must feel completely surrounded.
Totally. He becomes conscious that my chamber was invaded, that I was not alone. Hears actual sighs and breathing about my bed, mysterious whisperings. It's incredibly invasive.
Does he see anything else besides the footprint?
Yes. This is maybe the creepiest visual bit. 3 little spheres of phosphorescent light appear on the ceiling above him. They glow eerily, and then they drop.
Drop where?
Right onto his face and pillow. They feel warm, and they spatter liquidly. And his immediate thought, his intuition, is that they've turned into gouts of blood.
That's horrible.
And it doesn't stop there. He starts seeing things floating in the air, pallid faces, dimly luminous, white uplifted hands, appearing and disappearing, bodiless parts materializing in the dark.
This is full-on horror movie stuff. How does it end? Does it just fade away?
The sounds and visions eventually stop. A solemn stillness returns. The narrator, maybe thinking it's finally over, tries to sit up in bed. And his face brushes against a clammy hand.
Oh, God. Right there.
Right there in the dark. The shock just drains all his strength. He collapses back down. Then he hears a rustle like a garment leaving the room.
Okay. That sounds like the peak of the terror. What happens now? Does Twain finally bring in the funny?
This is the pivot point. The narrator, terrified but maybe also numb, lights the gaslight again. The light makes him feel a tiny bit better, more cheerful. He's looking at that giant footprint again, contemplating it.
And the giant comes back.
The elephant tread approaches again. The footprint in the ash starts to waver. The gas flame flickers down. This huge, cloudy presence fills the doorway, solidifying in the dim light.
Here we go again.
More terror. But this time, as the shape fully forms, it's described as a gigantic figure with a great sad face, and crucially, a benignant countenance. It looks kind of friendly, sad, but not scary.
Ah, the tonal shift. So the narrator isn't scared anymore.
Instantly. Fear gone, replaced by relief, even cheerfulness. He's just glad for the company. He calls the giant friendly. The horror movie just turned into something else entirely.
And this is where the humor comes in.
From the interaction and the sheer absurdity. The narrator starts talking to the giant. The giant, being enormous, tries to sit down.
Which doesn't go well, I'm guessing.
Hilariously badly. He breaks one chair, tries another, breaks that one too. He's just too big for the furniture.
And the narrator's reaction? Still friendly.
He gets exasperated, starts scolding the giant like he's a clumsy house guest. Confound it, haven't you any judgment at all? Calls him a petrified fool. The fear is completely gone, replaced by annoyance.
That's brilliant. What about the giant? Is he offended?
No, he's distressed. Actually starts crying, explains his problem. I had not a chance to sit down for a century. He's just tired and clumsy.
Oh, poor giant ghost.
The narrator softens up immediately. Poor devil, he says. The giant ends up just sitting on the floor. And then there's this ridiculous scene where the narrator tries to make him comfortable, gives him a pipe, wraps him in a red blanket, puts an upside-down sitz bath on his head like a helmet.
A sitz bath helmet. Seriously.
Seriously. So they can chat face to face. It's completely absurd. There's also a funny detail about the giant complaining his feet are gouged up from infernal chilblains, like ghostly chilblains.
Okay, this is definitely Twain. So who is this giant ghost? Why is he haunting this building?
He reveals his identity. He is the spirit of the petrified man that lies across the street there in the museum. He's the ghost of the famous Cardiff giant.
The Cardiff giant, that famous hoax.
The very same. And he explains his problem. He can't find rest, can't find peace, till they have given that poor body burial again. His spirit is stuck because his fake petrified body is unburied, stuck in a museum.
So like Pliny's ghost, he's tied to his remains.
Yeah.
But his remains are a known hoax. That's hilarious.
Exactly. He tells the narrator about his pathetic haunting attempts. He tried haunting the museum, even got other ghosts to help. Chains, groans, the works, but nobody ever goes to the museum at midnight, so it was pointless.
So he decided to haunt the building across the street instead.
Yeah, hoping someone there might hear him out. But he admits he and the other spirits are almost worn out from all the effort, dragging chains, groaning, tramping around. It's hard work being a ghost, apparently.
He sounds completely pathetic.
Right.
Hired, overworked ghost of a fake giant who just wants his body buried so he can finally rest. Twain just completely demolishes the horror setup with this sad sack character.
He really does, builds up genuine chills and then flips it into this absurd, character-driven comedy based on a real-life, very public hoax. It's genius.
And the material provided actually gave some background on the real Cardiff giant hoax, didn't it?
It did, and it's fascinating context for the story. The original giant was supposedly dug up in October 1869 on a farm in Cardiff, New York. A farmer named William Newell discovered it while having a well dug.
But Newell was in on it.
Oh, yeah. He immediately put up a tent and started charging people 25 cents, later 50 cents, to see this amazing petrified giant. It became a huge sensation. Thousands of people came. Newell eventually sold his share for $23,000.
Which was a fortune back then, like
Yeah.
$500,000 today.
Roughly, yes. Huge payout for a fake. But scientists and archaeologists knew it was a hoax pretty much right away.
How could they tell?
Things like tool marks still being visible on the stone, even though it was supposedly buried for ages in wet ground. And there was no good geological reason to dig a well right there. It smelled fishy.
So who was really behind it?
A guy named George Hull, who was actually Newell's cousin. He orchestrated the whole thing. He bought a huge block of gypsum stone in Iowa, shipped it to Chicago, hired a stone carver to sculpt it into a giant man, then used acids and stains to make it look old and weathered. Then he buried it on his cousin's farm for the discovery. Pure P.T. Barnum-style hustle.
Speaking of Barnum, didn't he get involved somehow?
He did. P.T. Barnum, the ultimate showman, offered to buy the giant, but Hull and Newell refused. So Barnum, being Barnum, apparently had someone secretly make a wax model of the giant. Then he created his own plaster replica.
And he put his replica on display.
Yes. And hilariously, Barnum started claiming that his replica was the real deal and the original Cardiff giant was the fake.
That's audacious, even for Barnum. Did he sue him?
Hull sued Barnum for calling the original giant a fake. But the judge basically threw it out, saying Barnum couldn't be sued for calling a known fake. The whole situation was just layers of absurdity.
Amazing. So Twain's story is tapping directly into this very current, very bizarre public spectacle. And the actual giant, the stone carving, still exists.
Apparently, the original is in the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York, and Barnum's replica might be at Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum in Michigan, so you can still see these relics of this giant hoax.
Incredible. Twain turning that whole fiasco into a ghost story is just perfect. Okay, so we've had Roman inquiry, Victorian chills, and American satire. What's left in this collection?
The final two pieces shift gears again. They're poems. Darkness by Lord Byron and On the Life of Man by Henry King. They move away from specific ghost encounters to broader, more existential themes.
Poems, offering different perspectives, I imagine.
Very different, but they resonate with the themes of mortality and the unknown that run through the other pieces. They kind of broaden the scope from individual hauntings to bigger questions about existence itself.
Okay, let's take Byron's Darkness first. What's
Ah.
the gist of that one? Sounds ominous.
It is. It's incredibly bleak, powerful stuff. Byron frames it as a dream he had, but it's a vision of total apocalypse.
That causes the apocalypse?
The sun is extinguished, just goes out. No explanation given. It just happens. And the earth is plunged into eternal night, blind and blackening in the moonless air. The stars are still there, but they give no light, just wander darkling.
Wow. Eternal darkness. What are the consequences in the poem?
Utter and rapid collapse. Time breaks down. Morn came and brought no day. Humanity loses its way immediately. People forget their usual passions, their ambitions, their loves, overwhelmed by the dread of their desolation. All that's left is his selfish prayer for light.
Do they try to make light?
Desperately, they burn everything. Thrones, the palaces, the huts, whole cities go up in flames, becoming temporary, consuming beacons.
Is there any sense of community left?
Fleetingly. He mentions men were gathered round their blazing homes to look once more into each other's face. A brief moment of connection in shared horror. But the fires die, the darkness returns. Despair takes over completely. People weep, some go mad, some just curse.
What about the natural world? Animals?
It collapses too. Wild birds fall from the sky. Wild animals become tame, trembling with fear, seeking shelter near humans. Even vipers become stingless. Nature itself is broken, and they get eaten for food.
So survival mode kicks in.
Brutally. War returns, but it's just fighting over scraps. A meal was bought with blood. Individuals hoard food, gorging himself in gloom. All connection is gone. No love was left.
Death.
The only thought is death, immediate and inglorious. Famine drives them to the ultimate taboo, cannibalism. The meager by the meager were devoured. Humanity consumes itself.
That's incredibly dark.
Yeah.
Is there any glimmer of hope? Any positive image at all?
Barely. There's a mention of one faithful dog guarding its dead master's body from scavengers, staying loyal until it starves to death itself. A tiny spark of loyalty in the overwhelming darkness.
How does it end? Does anyone survive?
The poem describes the very last two people left alive in a vast dead city. They were enemies before the darkness fell. They find one last flickering ember of a fire, see each other's faces ravaged, hideous from starvation and despair. They just shriek and die. Even of their mutual hideousness, they died, killed by the sheer horror of seeing what humanity has become, reflected in the last other face.
So, total extinction.
Complete. Byron describes the final state of the world. A dead lump of death, a chaos of hard clay. Water still, ships rotting, waves dead, tides gone, moon gone, winds withered, clouds vanished. Absolute silence and stillness.
And the final line.
It personifies the victor. Darkness had no need of aid from them. She was the universe. Darkness isn't just absence of light, it is everything. It's an overwhelming vision of cosmic vulnerability, societal collapse, and absolute despair. Really heavy stuff. Profoundly heavy. Now, in complete contrast, the other poem in the collection, Henry King's On the Life of Man, offers a very different kind of reflection.
Okay, what's the tone of this one? Lighter, I hope.
Not exactly light, but much quieter, more concise, more personal, less cosmically terrifying. It's a meditation on how short and fleeting human life is.
On the Life of Man. Who is Henry King?
Likely the 17th century bishop and poet. His poem uses natural imagery, not apocalyptic visions.
How does he approach the theme of life's brevity?
He starts simply, even such is man. Then he compares human existence to a series of quick, transient things in nature. The falling of a star, the flight of an eagle, the fresh spring's gaudy hue that fades, silver drops of morning dew that disappear, the wind that chafes the flood, restless but temporary, even bubbles which on water stood. All things beautiful or active, but very short-lived.
So life is like these fleeting moments.
Exactly. He sums it up by saying, human life is like a borrowed light, is straight called in and paid tonight. It's temporary, like a loan that's due back very quickly.
And the ending. How does he wrap it up?
The final lines directly link the fate of those natural images to the fate of man. As the wind stops, the bubble pops, spring ends, the dew dries, the star falls, the eagle's flight ends parallel to all that, and man forgot.
And man forgot. That's quite poignant. So life is short, and ultimately we disappear without a trace, forgotten like a burst bubble.
That's the core message. It's a much more melancholic, almost resigned reflection on individual mortality and impermanence compared to Byron's universe-ending horror. One is vast and terrifying, the other is small, quiet, and sad.
They really do offer contrasting views on facing the end, don't they? One, a total cosmic wipeout. The other, a gentle, natural fading away into oblivion, both dealing with cessation, but in vastly different scales and tones.
And putting them together at the end of this collection is quite effective. It leaves you thinking about mortality from these two very different angles after experiencing the specific ghost stories.
So that's the full collection, presented by the Windy Valley Digest. We've gone from Pliny the Younger, wondering about specters in ancient Rome,
through Ada Wissen's chilling Victorian summons with that incredible twist,
to Mark Twain's genuinely scary haunting that suddenly turns into a hilarious encounter with the ghost of a famous hoax.
And finally landing on these two poems, Byron's epic vision of darkness and King's quiet reflection on life's fleeting nature. It's quite a journey.
It really is. And even though the pieces are so different, different authors, centuries apart, different genres, you can see those connecting threads, can't you?
Absolutely. The big themes are definitely there. The unknown, the nature of the supernatural are ghosts, real entities like Pliny considers, or psychological like the doctor initially suspects, or even pathetic like Twain's giant.
And mortality, of course. From the specific violent deaths in the stories to the broader contemplations in the poems. And just how humans react to fear, to things they can't explain.
You see Pliny trying to reason it out, collect evidence. You feel the sheer terror in Weazen's story. You get that bizarre shift from fear to annoyed sympathy in Twain. And then the overwhelming despair in Byron versus the quiet acceptance in King. Different responses across the board.
It shows how people in different times and cultures have tried to make sense of these same fundamental mysteries, doesn't it? Using the tools they had. Philosophy, storytelling, satire, poetry.
So why should you, listening now, care about digging into these particular old writings? What's the takeaway?
Well, for one, they tap into questions we still ask, right?
Yeah.
About death, about what might be out there beyond our senses, about how we deal with fear and uncertainty. These aren't just historical curiosities. They speak to enduring human concerns.
And they offer these incredibly vivid moments that stick with you. Pliny's philosopher calmly telling a ghost to wait. That claw-like hand with the missing finger, the giant footprint, the world ending in darkness, life as a bubble, those images have power.
They really do. And it's just a great reminder of how powerful storytelling is in all its forms. A letter, a magazine story, a poem, they can all explore these deep, sometimes dark corners of human experience in compelling ways.
It's been a fascinating deep dive, tracing these threads through such different texts, from ancient questions to modern anxieties reflected in these old words.
From Pliny asking Sura, are ghosts real? To King saying, life is short, with some thrills and laughs in between. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the shadowy and the supernatural.
Thanks for listening to this overview of stories and poems we've shared from the Windy Valley Digest. These voices, Roman, Victorian, and American, remind us that questions of fear, mortality, and the unknown echo across time and culture. What you've heard here is only a glimpse. To explore the full collection and discover more lost stories, visit us at the Windy Valley Digest.